something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a
I'm coming, man. Don't you down me, Foley.
I'm sorry, can we cut? Jamie, can we cut?
What is going on here?
Hey, I'm about to jump out this helicopter like Wesley Snipes.
I'm doing the scene right now.
What scene? The scene is about emotionality. Where is it?
Oh, God! I am dealing with a bunch of prima donnas.
The action guy who left the fridge open. The award winner.
Critically acclaimed Australian actor Kirk Lazarus underwent a controversial procedure in order to play the platoon's African-American sergeant.
I know who I am. I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. The comedian.
You think you can do what I do? Take a picture of this.
This summer.
Want to make this movie right? We take those boys up there, put them in the trees, shoot the whole thing guerrilla style. Real fear in their eyes. Yes, yes.
The movie they think they're making
Exterior, rainforest, dust, cut to a frightening jungle.
isn't a movie anymore.
Hold on a minute.
So what?
This feels pretty real!
Exactly. Let's use it. Taking a speed, man.
Some of us might not make it back.
What do you mean? Like, not on the same flight?
Who sent you here?
Hey, dude, you all right? Totally leaned into that, bro. You want to do one more?
I don't believe you people.
What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
Tropic Thunder. To go a lot of times just to get a bet here. Now we up in the big league.
That's the theme song for the Jeffersons.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
You out of your mind?
What?
You really need help.
And just because the theme song don't make it not true.
Okay, welcome to Movie Night Extravaganza. We are doing Platoon Part 2, aka Tropic Thunder tonight. I remember being 13 and seeing that movie. The trailer still even brings it back. But I'm joined as always, well, not as always, but I'm joined on these Thursday episodes by Karthik as my co-host instead of Andy, who got the night off, or I don't know what Andy's doing, but and Marcus and Dick Warlock from Left Flank Bets, and hopefully Erica if she gets her kid to bed, I guess.
Yeah, she warned us that he's being a little shit. He's refusing to go to bed. He's going through a rebellious phase. But I told her, I heard he's got a glass jaw, so just real quick, he'll go right to sleep.
Night.
40% of parents instead of 40% of cops.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I cut something to start introducing this. This is a thing that I thought was kind of funny, watching through. Number one, all right, so Tropic Thunder is clearly based on the Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness style, I think, documentary, but it's a modern version of it because now we're not in the auteur phase of cinema. So so it's been replaced by all of these actors who are brands kind of, and a producer who doesn't really give a fuck what's going on in the actual set, but just wants to make money from it. And so I cut something together of Oliver Stone talking about Platoon, Coppola talking about Coppola talking about Apocalypse Now, and then the cast of Tropic Thunder talking about how much fun they had in Hawaii while they were shooting it. And I thought it was kind of a really funny breakdown of kind of the thing that they're trying to make fun of actually being the case. You know what I mean? The movie is just a bunch of well-known A-list celebrities hanging out together, and they're kind of parodying the fact that celebrities are now so pampered that they just get to go to the set. Even in Vietnam, where a few decades ago it would have been an actual war zone in parts of it, and just hang out.
We trained them on a 24-hour basis for 2 weeks, and it worked. I wanted them to get no sleep, and Dale Dye helped me with that. We put them in a bivouac training situation, but a real one. Where you don't sleep and you basically pulling sentry duty all night. Kind of, you split your duty with foxholes, 3 guys, and Dale would stage attacks and stuff in the middle of the night.
Really?
So they were nervous and they were tired beyond belief, which is good. That's where you want them. And Californians, and I try to mix it all up. But the whole idea from the beginning was that we're going to make this, with our little bit of money, we're going to make this as realistic as we could. So we planned it that way. The camp worked. We got the full cooperation of the Philippine Army and some shitty helicopters that they had, but very dangerous ones. But at least it was a start.
Had that ever been done before? The camp, the idea of having them live like soldiers.
So. I don't think so, because that had bothered me a lot. Maybe in the old days, but I don't know one. No.
What made you fall on that? Like why was that?
Well, I'd lived it.
Right.
I'd lived it, so I wanted them to. Above all, I wanted them to be tired, irritable. It gives you a sense of what it's like. There's bugs. There's heat. It's a jungle, and.
How did they respond to that?
At first, there were a lot of bitching. There was a SAG, SAG, the SAG union said you have to have 12-hour turnaround. So a few of them quit.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. But
and we replaced them because I had a long waiting list of people that I'd seen over the years.
What's your favorite moment from the movie that you remember in terms of something that didn't happen on the set, that happened off the set? Like a party or a trip you took with your family, or like going to see a volcano, or is there a rainbow that affected you in some way?
To me, my favorite thing that happened off the set was always had to do with the ocean.
Yeah.
Because we're out there in paradise,
Beautiful.
And it's all about getting out there for the sunset kayak. It was very meditative.
Did you ever swim with dolphins?
I didn't swim with dolphins, but we did take one of those like trips down the coast in one of those. Yeah. And that actually was a little too intense. We were going really hard in the
big waves. Yeah, the Nepali coast.
Even those waves, just a little too intense for Jack Black.
Whoa. My favorite was the Oliver Stone union busting, being like,
oh yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely fucked up, and that's one reason that you can't make movies like Platoon anymore. You know what I mean? Like, where you're actually in the fucking jungle 24/7, like torturing actors, is obviously because that SAG exists, and I mean they did that then too, but like they kind of could operate outside of the purview, which you can't really do anymore. Like we're back kind of in a studio system where you can't really just like go off on your own as a guerrilla, like. But I mean, I think that's what the movie is making fun of in general. You know what I mean? Like without that directorial control, like these situations can't happen.
Yeah, like those guys, like if you're being paid like over $1 million to do a movie, like you shouldn't be abusing extras who are getting $12 to like be shot in the head in the background. But like if you're being paid $1 million or more to fucking like be the hero or something, I think you don't get to have a union. I think you're management at that point. You know what I mean? Like if you're a pampered ass, if you have your own trailer, go fuck yourself. You don't get to be part of the collective bargain anymore.
Well, it's also, the dichotomy. And, I mean, as much as Ben Stiller wants to say like, oh, actors have gotten so pampered, that's why we're kind of making fun. I mean, clearly he is too, but, but like, as much as he wants to say that, like, I mean, the real grueling parts of making any of those Vietnam War films, really, where they actually like wanted to make it as realistic as possible. Like, it's probably good that they can't make films like that specifically. You know what I mean? Because like, I don't know, if you watch Oliver Stone talking about making Platoon, it's just a list of like union grievances that just didn't. He was just like, all right, then get off the set. If you don't want to be literally tortured and like treated like you're at war, get off the set.
And I mean, literally, it reminded me of like infantry training, because like just described like, hey, you just gotta sit in this hole. There's really no reason for it, you know what I'm saying? Because like to a certain extent, like you get it, but there's still gonna be these like like other people who get to go home and get to sleep and get to shower, but they have shifts of how much they fuck with you, and yeah. But like I signed up for that. I'm not an actor.
They train you to be like, the training is misery. They're like, oh, you just don't get to sleep, and you're like, okay, like I get that I will have to do this at some point, like in combat or whatever, but like I don't have to do it right now. Like I get what you're trying to get at. Is like, oh, like it's gonna suck when you're in the rain. It's gonna suck when you don't get any sleep. Like, well, yeah, dude. Well, obviously. Like, how many times do I have to do it to like? What is it? My brain isn't getting rewired by you. Like, I'm becoming dumber when you don't give me sleep. You know, it's like not. It's not being like, well, this is what's gonna be like when you're at war, and I'm like, oh my god, damn. Now I know how to shoot straight.
Like,
fuck you.
I had this one dude that he was a staff sergeant at this like advanced infantry training. It just like makes it just like it sucks more, you know. But he kept saying it's like you exist in the conditions you create. You exist in the conditions you create, and like the only thing that made sense was that I should not have joined the Marine Corps because everything that's happening to me, I can't do anything about.
This is your fault for joining up. You shouldn't have done it. But you know what? You're in hell now, buddy.
It's like that scene in Jarhead when he fucking, why the fuck are you here, Marine? He's like, I got lost on my way to college, sir. And he just like fucking smacks him across the head.
Well, I guess it's inherently funny though to put somebody through that, right? Like, and then at the end of it, the thing that they get to do is like finish a movie and go to like walk on the red carpet and like maybe, you know what I mean? Like maybe win an Oscar or whatever. Like, so it is. I guess that part of it is funny. Just to like assume that like these actors that are like overly pampered. That's also why they didn't pick overly pampered actors in like the auteur films. They didn't want the director overshadowed by like a bunch of, because I mean Ben Stiller presumably is supposed to be like a middle-aged man that's like in war for whatever reason, like but because he's like a brand, he's like the franchise brand, like, you know, of course Tom Cruise is like, well, we want that guy in it because then that's like name recognition.
Well, like all of them, like yeah, I mean, fucking Jack Black is the Nutty Professor. Al Pacino is just there to market his busted nut bars and the booty sweat, you know, literally whipping out the booty sweat, like,
which kind of was a thing for a while. Like they would randomly like put rappers in movies that, like, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden there would be like Ludacris and a bunch of like
someone has to do. So that's the thing, is like someone has to do the music. Someone has to do the album that goes along with it. Will Smith, like that was already baked in. But it's like you got to pull LL Cool J because deepest, bluest, my hat is like a shark's fin. You know what I'm saying? You got to bleed. You got to bring in. You got to bring in DMX. You know, and like I can't remember what the song was that went with the Jackie Chan film, but like there was a song.
It was Jet Li. It wasn't Jackie Chan.
Oh, now I'm canceled. I'll see you guys later. I'm sorry.
Get the fuck out of here.
but also, no matter
you better hurry up and talk about this movie about blackface.
Speaking of racism, I think it's kind of revealing that like I think the casting strategy in my mind, at least, maybe I'm reading too much into it, is kind of exposed by the blackface, because that's to show how absurd it is, how casting choices are like totally incongruous, like it's just not even based on anything in reality.
Well, it's based on branding, like it's based on
it's based on this brand. This guy who has like a method acting like brand is getting to do this, etc. So my sense is that I feel like the casting choices more reveal the fact that nobody is appropriately cast in their roles. I feel like that's the point.
Yep.
That they're all kind of supposed to be out of place.
They mentioned that in I can't remember which clip it is. I think it might be the next one that I was going to play about. Which is Justin Thoreau or whatever talking about writing it with Ben Stiller, because he's obviously in it and was in like a bunch of random TV shows, but like, you know, is in it for like 5 seconds, literally as like a gunner in the beginning scene, and he like co-wrote it with Ben Stiller. But they like talk a lot about the fact that they wanted everybody like inappropriately cast, like to the max. Like, how far can we get it so that this person shouldn't be in a war movie? Which like in the 90s really is how they cast war movies, it felt like. I mean, Vietnam wasn't really like one that they were doing because like we had lost Vietnam, but like, you know what I mean? So that's not maybe like the one to do like a ensemble cast with, but like every single like World War II movie, every single World War I movie that they've really done has this like strange ensemble cast where it doesn't feel like they're just like, all right, let's take anybody really that we can get that like to promote this movie. And it's like prestige drama, but like one brand at a time.
And there's always like this one character or one actor who'll provide the anchor, right? Like in Oliver Stone's case, Oliver Stone himself brought the cred that he was the guy who served etc. And there'll always be this one person who will like be on board, who would kind of anchor the whole thing, legitimize the whole setup. And in this case, it was funny. That was Nick Nolte, right? Like, unless I was mistaken. Yeah, it's kind of funny that like he plays a guy who's who finally reveals that he didn't actually do any of that shit, and he didn't even go to Vietnam. And I think that's kind of also like
stolen valor of all time.
I was in the sanitation department.
Stolen valor. Couldn't even be trusted to go to Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like my war heroes that didn't steal valor. Thank you.
I did. This movie did come out when I was in the Army, and we fucking loved it. We thought it was hilarious. But I remember we were talking about it one day, and our squad leader came up to us, and he was like, "You're talking about that fucking movie, Tropic Thunder?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's awesome. Have you seen it?" And he's like, "That's disrespectful to the troops." And we laughed at him. We were like, "You fucking bitch, shut the fuck up."
Oh my God.
We're like, their little kid was stabbing him in the back and he threw him off the bridge. It was hilarious. And he's like, "But there's those veterans that they're portraying." It's like, you're so fucking dumb. You're so
nobody in the movie whatsoever is like a military person or a veteran. You know, once the guy is exposed as a fraud, like Danny McBride is kind of the closest thing, and he's just like a stunt guy.
I lost a finger. What is the movie he lost a finger on? He says
Driving Miss Daisy.
Driving Miss Daisy. I almost blinded Jamie Lee Curtis on the set of Freaky Friday.
You know what's really funny about that line? We just did Halloween, and the new Halloween, the first one at least, the 2018 one, was written by Danny McBride for some weird reason. Like, don't tell me why Danny McBride, like, you know, but Blumhouse hired him to like co-write it. So I wonder, like, if there was an awkward moment where Jamie Lee Curtis was like, "Oh, you almost blinded me on fucking Freaky Friday, did you?"
Yeah, that'd be good.
He probably doesn't even know who the fuck he is.
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis, come on, she's royalty. Danny McBride is a plebeian in comparison.
Yeah, and this movie too. But I mean...
like it's interesting how like we're entering a phase where like a lot of this kind of writing, a lot of engagement with this type of material is constantly at the level of like irony, and like having to give it this brand of like where we're having to make fun of it, and it's like in this case it's like exposed by how the filming of this whole process is just like so arbitrary, and it's just cameras secretly hidden in places, and it's done like he calls it guerrilla filmmaking, and it kind of like what strikes me, and I always like want to draw parallels with the actual thing, because you know you're not only talking about filming a war movie, but you're also talking about the war itself. And like it's interesting how it reflects the idea of going in someplace without a mission, and like without anybody who's actually on ground leading it, knowing what's up, and it's kind of fascinating.
I also think that any like in the movie, like in the universe of the movie itself, I think any relation to the actual war is accidental, right? Like it's what happens if you want to do like an Oliver Stone style or claim you're doing like an aesthetically Oliver Stone style film, but like with no, like it's not an anti-war film, clearly. Like they make sure like that it's the platoon scene with Sergeant Elias, like that exact scene, but there's nobody, like there's no friendly fire.
Nice.
It would presumably be like a presumably be like a pro-militaristic reading of the Vietnam War, which is hilarious in itself, but also like without that context, I think like I don't think you can make like a oh, isn't this Vietnam story great, like but then try to do it the way Oliver Stone did. The whole point of Oliver Stone's thing is like, listen, this was literally hell, and I'm trying to show you my personal hell. But in this case, like everybody's staying in hotels and stuff like that, so it's like.
You know what the cowardice this movie is, though? A better movie would have been, because you just like, oh, I don't think we're in Vietnam anymore. We could be in Laos, or something. Like we were filming it in Vietnam for real, but now we're in a different country, totally removed from the war. But like you said, fucking Coppola and Oliver Stone paid off a psycho right-wing dictator in order to film their movie in the Philippines. The better
who's literally having a war with communists. While at least Coppola is filming it, which is exactly what like kind of is what was happening in Vietnam, like without any irony to it.
Yes, which would have been a better movie in this movie if they're like, they acknowledge that they're like they link up with the rebels or something, and then they find out like, oh, we're paying off this dictator in order to make this movie. Like, it's fucked up, you know? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then make that
yeah.
a storyline. Like they
like instead of and like that would be actually, I mean, would be like a little bit, I don't know if like poetic justice or whatever the hell, but like if they get caught by the rebels instead of heroin dealers, and like that is the real conflict throughout the movie, that would have like thread a fucking needle for sure.
That would have been a much better, I think, movie. I would have been engaged in like the drama of it.
You guys want to hear something really fucking weird about this? A personal connection I have to this. I found out today. I got
Robert
a new
Downey
job.
Jr. is your dad?
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is my dad. No, I got a new job, and my boss sat me. I'm in training for my new job right now. My boss sat me down today, and he was like giving me like the pep talk about what I can expect and shit. And he's like, "So what did you do before this?" And I was like, "I did this shit in the office, and I worked at some nonprofits, and I was in the army before that." He's like, "Oh yeah, what'd you do?" And I was like, "I was in the infantry." And he's like, "Oh shit." He's like, "I served too." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, where at? What branch or whatever?" And he's like, I served in the Filipino army. I fought the communists.
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh fuck! He can never know what a fucking commie I am." He gets kicked right away.
Well, I mean, the story of the Philippines is particularly fucked to like use a movie like this in, or to do a movie like this in, because obviously, like, you know, our first like imperialist conquest was anything we could take from the Spanish, in like the, you know what I mean, like the 1890s. Like, obviously, we had taken, you know, this country from indigenous people, but that's technically colonization rather than imperialism. So our first like venture into imperialism rather than colonization and conquest was first Cuba, which of course we're still like terrified of like someone like Fidel Castro, which like is pretty funny in that context. So first Cuba, and then Puerto Rico, and then the Philippines within the same year. So you know, like having like paying off the army there, that's kind of a US backed army, fighting off communists is pretty fucked up.
And lately we've been doing it for the past couple decades since the War on Terror. Do you guys know about MILF?
So that's something where that's my connection, I guess.
There you go.
Is my first deployment. We did end up going down to the Philippines for training, but we ended up in General Santos City, patrolling with their special operations
to fight the MILFs.
Yeah.
Which became the Marcus Islamic Liberation Front, right?
Yeah.
You converted them?
Yes. Once they heard the good word of Islamobidism, they just couldn't resist.
You joined them with the Malarxists.
Look, all right, we're gonna do this, but nothing's gonna fundamentally change.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you this. Nothing's gonna fundamentally change.
It's one of the truest tenets of Malarco-Bidenism.
Right. Yeah, Philippines is one of those countries that is like completely ravaged by the legacies of colonialism, to the point of like having the longest protracted communist insurgency, like, you know, of all time. And then also like, oh, by the way, little Islamic liberation fronts are popping up and giving us more excuses to go do more imperialism there, because now they're the enemy, you know. The commies.
Well, it was a very similar thing, I think, with Indonesia at different times.
Yep.
You know, we did everything we possibly could to help like overthrow Sukarno, and the CIA did. But during Eisenhower's administration, he was the one propping up, like the CIA was propping up the Islamic, conservative Islamic parties, because Eisenhower realized that they were way more aligned with like a U.S. like mentality than which Sukarno wasn't obviously a communist. Sukarno was kind of a, you know, third worldist, as he coined the term, social democrat. Like, he was kind of just trying to have a more democratized country. And so our allies within that, like our first allies that we were just relentlessly giving millions of dollars to and like funneling that in, were all like conservative Islamic parties, as they were across, you know, pretty much the third world until Afghanistan in 1979, where, you know, I mean, we continued to do it then, but then kind of we slowly switched into like, you know, going into the Middle East, country by country.
Yeah, they tried. The CIA literally tried to make a porno that was supposed to be Sicarno fucking a hooker. They hired a Mexican dude and
who looked nothing like Sicarno.
They put horrible prosthetics on him, and they were like, "We can't. This is shoddy work. We can't."
Well, they focus grouped it. They took it to other countries that had problems with Sicarno, and were U.S. backed, but weren't Indonesia. And they focus grouped hey, do you guys think this looks enough like Sicarno to pull this off? And they're like, no, that looks nothing.
I'm just picturing
Sicarno.
some CIA fucking just white dude, just what are you talking about? This is spitting image. It's what do you mean?
I mean,
I was
also
holding
they
up this
didn't.
picture. I couldn't tell the difference between the two of them.
Also, they didn't care. Sicarno was like, "Yeah, I get pussy. So what?" He was out
Sicarno kind of had leaned into the tradition of the multiple wives and girlfriends, you know what I mean, that kind of
he had
image.
some gumas on the side. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You know,
so Sicarno kind of was a famously a womanizer, but not in a way that anybody was upset about, or not in the way that if you revealed it. I think that they were thinking if they revealed it, conservative Islamists in Indonesia, maybe, because it's you know what I mean? There is conservative Islamic parties at the time too, but throughout Indonesia, but nobody gave a fuck anyway. And he was also all right, if you don't want me as your president, just vote someone else in. Use the actual democratic processes that we've kind of created here to vote someone else in. Yeah. It's hard to get mad at a guy like that. At a Chad that.
Why do you think they had a is it really a problem, a drug problem over there, where they actually have this drug cartel that is making heroin and selling, which has been I thought it was almost incongruous to the place, right? Is it a Philippines? What's it called? Is it a problem in Vietnam?
In Vietnam, yes, but because of the destabilization that came from, instead of I don't want to call it the Viet Cong, because I think that's kind of a term we created, but the NVL or the NVA, instead of having someone that actually believed in having democratic institutions to start with before the Vietnam War, at least, that looked up to George Washington. Ho Chi Minh literally sent letters to the U.S. and was like, hey, I'm just an anti-colonialist. I don't want to necessarily be a communist. I'm an anti-colonialist that wants to I look up to George Washington. I want to overthrow the French rule. I just want this to be a free country. And we ignored a huge amount of those letters constantly, over and over and over again. He literally wrote them in long. So it could have had I don't know, Vietnam itself could have had a government that really was focused on making the peasants because a lot of it was peasants because of the French imperialists. So instead of having an actual cohesive government that was extremely popular everywhere that it was in control, and was training people to actually they weren't mainly training people to be rebels and fight in the Vietnam War. They were training people just to be more empowered as human beings. Instead of having that, we had some extremely brutal. The first president of South Vietnam was from New Jersey, or had lived in New Jersey. We plucked him from New Jersey, and we said, "Hey, you want to be the president of a country?" So the fact that right now, a lot of that area is completely destabilized, and there really is a golden triangle. That's not something they made up. That fact is because we kept Vietnam in the dark, and you know what I mean, and let actual rebel groups. After the fact, we stopped giving a fuck.
But the way the movie is kind of cowardly in that regard, and it absolves itself of that history, is oh, well, we don't even know what country we're in. We were in that helicopter for a while, Well,
that's something that they said in both the filming of Apocalypse Now and Platoon, or in the movie itself, because there's the blurred line between Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam in the actual conflict. But in this case, they're kind of taking that line and removing it of context, as they do with a lot of things, as they do with the Black Power helmet on Robert Downey Jr.'s head, as they do with the North Vietnamese flag in the background. I don't know if you noticed that when they're actually shooting the scene. They had it just on the set. There was an NBA flag in the background. So they removed everything of context, which I think they did that on purpose to try to, no longer were we really kind of are we controlled by like these directors that actually want to make a statement. Now it's just kind of like as I was talking to Varn last night about just movies in general, like the rule by committee thing. You know what I mean? Like everybody kind of just has like all these different people have profits they want to make out of a movie, and it's an investment from then on. And there's a studio that's like wants to make a shitload of money after putting a shitload of money into it. So like it's parodying that, but not also making an anti-war statement, and not making a statement that, the fact that there's like a drug trade there in general comes from the fact that it was ravaged by conflict from us. Like they could have made that was cowardly of them.
Yeah, well, they don't want to make that statement. Like, I was here. This came up again the other day, but I remember like Tom Cruise famously, like if you ask him, who's obviously in this movie and he's amazing in it.
You could barely tell that's like Tom Cruise if you didn't.
Yes, he's a great actor. I don't know why he doesn't do more of like Les Grossman type shit. He's amazing. Like I remember seeing that and being like, this is like a new, like he's bloomed into like this new like self-aware character or something. Which
my favorite line he says, because presumably he's like a Harvey Weinstein type producer, studio executive guy.
His name is like, Les Grossman. I feel like it's like some kind of gross man or something. And it's
Les Grossman, please. Yeah. My favorite line is he's yelling at one of his subordinates. He's like, "I will literally rip your dick off." And then like one of his female employees looks at him and he goes, "And your tits off." But no, he's like, "I wasn't talking to you, but I will rip your tits off," or something like that.
Yeah,
so it's like, oh, you're gonna like
in the background, he just says that. But Tom Cruise famously, if you ask him like on interviews and podcasts and stuff, like, what's your favorite movie that you were in or something, he'll be like, "Oh, they're all so amazing." Like he'll give like the most political, like cowardly answer to it as possible. Like, oh no, he was at a baseball game or a basketball game, and they were like, "Who's your team?" And he was like, "I'm just a baseball fan." Like he wouldn't even say which team he was cheering for, like because he's so scared he might alienate, some potential fans or something. Also, I thought about too, like, did you guys hear the tape of Tom Cruise doing the on-set freak out when he was filming the new Mission Impossible movie?
Oh yeah,
I was thinking this is So he, and I think this is my I'm fully red-pilled conspiracy theory brain because since COVID, but like it seems like it was fully staged, where Tom Cruise is he's dropping a couple F-bombs and yelling at in very clear audio at some other employees, being like, "We need to social distance. We're not shutting this movie down. This industry is suffering," And he's having a full-on freak out. He's like 50% Les Grossman in this recording. And I just remember thinking like, oh damn, we're now like 12 years removed from this fucking movie, and we're getting a little bit of Les Grossman for Tom Cruise here, a little Les Grossman performance, because
he also went on every talk show. He also went onto like multiple talk shows in full Les Grossman, like, you know what I mean? Like he went on Conan and all these other things, like these other places, and was like promoting his appearance in this. But to be fair to Tom Cruise, he's also like the last victim of probably. All right, so I'm a big fan of auteur cinema, like I am. It sucks that they literally would bring people out of the country so they wouldn't have to listen to the SAG regulations. But like they also, if you were a huge auteur director, you'd also choose actors that weren't A-level actors most of the time if you weren't trying to make a statement. So Oliver Stone obviously is guilty of this with Platoon, but like Coppola is like one of the most, like famously the most culpable in the auteur torture of actors. But Kubrick, the last movie that Kubrick ever made was Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, where he brought them to England, tortured them with the longest film shoot, at least up till that time in history, tortured them as much as he possibly fucking could, and then dropped dead 3 days later, as if he had like completed the last, he finished the movie, edited it, dropped dead 3 days after that,
and then he just lays down.
No, it literally was like that. Like he finished the movie, he's like, the movie's done. Like not just filming, like he edited the movie himself. 3 days after that, his family found him, and he was dead in bed. Like he had just that was it for him.
I thought he was also in the middle of filming AI, wasn't he? Like, and then Spielberg had to finish it.
Oh, is that why that movie sucked?
Eyes Wide Shut kind of sucks too, because I it's not the most I think it kind of suffers from a similar thing to Tropic Thunder, where like he doesn't like Kubrick didn't go after what I think he really should have. I mean, maybe this is like Epstein brain, like just seeping into my fucking.
He just whispered about it. It was just he just did a little Fidelio, and that was all you could hear about. Like, yeah, he was touching on like, oh, there is a cabal of these fucking psycho pedos, but it was just like people in like long dresses and masks, like giving each other blowjobs instead of like, you know.
And they weren't even social distancing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, Kubrick also famously, his most famous torture session was of Shelley Duvall in The Shining, right? Like,
yeah, and broke her.
Yeah, just she had they recorded it for a documentary of her having like a full mental breakdown because he's like, do 112 takes, you know, and she's like, I don't know what you want, you fucking
yeah. And then
bastard.
people did the same thing as the Coppola documentary, where they're like, listen, he might hate and torture women, but he is brilliant. And like the same thing in the Coppola documentary, you see like literally, and I have this clip for later on, and I do want to play it later on. Martin Sheen's heart attack, and everybody is still like, listen, he was under a lot of stress. But that's the thing, though, that you can't make a movie like that now because there's no director that's terrifying enough, but also brilliant enough that people will just still, like, you know, decades later, just be like, he was a genius. He literally sexually assaulted, killed, and pillaged an entire village, but he was a genius. And you know what? If that meant that there was no apocalypse now, I would take that. Like the movie, the Heart of Darkness, the Coppola one, is literally filmed by his wife and daughter of like horrific fucking things that he did. It's like most of their footage. Like the woman that was narrating it was reading from, it was Coppola's wife, and she was reading from her own diary about what happened during the making of Apocalypse Now.
Oh, it reminds me of like the weird thing is that I think that like Apocalypse Now is like a treasured, you know, little piece of art, right? Like not to this, and for good reason. There's things about it that don't work, I think, but there is something there. Like they found something, right? The real sad thing is when people get utterly tortured for things that suck shit afterwards, like the Island of Dr. Moreau, another famous Brando torture session, where like I remember reading an account of like one of the guys who worked in the movie literally like running into the jungle on the island and never just disappearing, like living on the island forever, like deciding I'm done, fuck everything, fuck you, fuck everything, and just disappearing in the middle of the movie. Like,
well, Brando also famously planning out Last Tango in Paris, right? Like, I think like there was literally a sexual assault that happened on the set of it that they filmed and was in the movie with Brando.
You're talking about the Brando butter scene?
Yeah.
Yes, she didn't know he was going to tackle her and pretend to rape her with a stick of butter.
Yeah,
she had no idea he was about to do that.
And they got as close as they humanly could. Now, inhumanly could, I guess, is a better term.
Yeah.
You know, without actually, but like still, that's like traumatizing, and that by any stretch of the imagination. Like if you ran up to someone, you know what I mean? Like even if they had agreed to like hang out with you and like film something, you didn't tell them they were going to get like, you know, like fake, I guess, dry raped with a stick of butter, and you did that. Like a judge would be like, no, that's assault. That's sexual assault. You can't.
Yeah, and they laughed about it afterwards. They were like, she didn't know, but we got that real raw reaction. Yes, she was genuinely it wasn't acting, you fucking bitch. She was genuinely terrified. You were assaulting her, you fucking psychos. What's wrong with you?
But I mean, to some degree, and I feel like this is something that I'll you know touch on again. No pun intended. Touch on again, like in this podcast a lot is, you know, that New Hollywood moment where it's like the auteur scene really takes off. Like at least for actors, like the fact that, you know, movies aren't done that way anymore is probably a good thing. But at the same time, like there's always going to be this weird like, oh well, movies aren't as good anymore because now, you know, like you can't film them that way. And I think that's kind of what Ben Stiller is grappling with throughout this movie, like, you know, as the director and as the writer. And I you know, I'm queuing up this this clip that I have ready about, you know, the process of writing Tropic Thunder itself. But like this auteur moment is over. And I mean, probably on a human rights level, it's a good thing. Like you can't just literally be like a dictator. Like Coppola in the.
I mean, not everyone who was like this category of filmmaker is like someone who. I mean, there have been women auteurs as well. Like Jane Campion is somebody who is like Sofia Coppola. Like speaking of Francis Ford Coppola, Sofia Coppola is an auteur as well, and she is like someone who's still active and stuff like that. And like you would say Jordan Peele.
She
is
learned
like
probably
considering
she was
himself
on set
to
with
be.
her dad. Like she was on set with her dad in Godfather 3. Like she definitely learned not to be an auteur.
She was in the movie,
star
She
of
was
Godfather 3. Yeah.
But I'm saying like on the set, like I mean like being directed by, not like on set like hanging out. Like I mean like like as someone that was literally like I'm sure like her dad tried to push even farther in some level.
Well, that's probably why she doesn't make movies like him too.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to say. Sorry,
Yeah.
I got lost in the, but
No.
in the Heart of Darkness thing, Coppola's line is the last role you can really, like the last dictatorial role in the world is as a director. Like the last time you can really be like a dictator and kind of take over like that is as a director. Like nobody, like in no other industry. Even
you
then,
also
like,
do this dude, the or person who does the
conductor?
the symphony, conductor, right?
I feel like they're just ignoring the whole. I
That's
feel like
an-
he doesn't do anything. I feel like they're all just playing some music and they don't even look at him.
No, I think he has like his they are perfectly synced to his motions, I think, and that's why like he has that going, and it's usually a dude. That's why it's also like a very.
I think Revolutionary Tracks. You guys should get a conductor in there.
Oh,
a socialist conductor who's basically everybody who's playing is also conducting at the same time now. So.
A woman.
But that's the same question as the dictatorial auteur role, right? Like, if like like technically speaking, like a socialist, a socialist conductor that doesn't let everybody has like a democratized role in coming up with music, and I'm only saying this in terms of art. So if you have someone that's like, like everybody is their own conductor, the music wouldn't work. If you have like SAG representatives, the newest thing is like like when they have sex scenes or whatever, they have like a person, like a coordinator on set for that will like make sure. A lot of people and like a lot of actors and actresses have made fun of the fact that there's now there's just like a fucking like whatever, like person on set to make sure that like HR is fully aware of like what the sex scene is. And to give like counseling if things go weird, like, so you know what I mean? Which is probably like, there's one part of everything that's like, all right, well, there's a lot of sexual assault in film. There's a lot of sexual assault in TV. Like it makes sense that they would want to have like an HR person, but at the same time, like, I mean, the art direction of it, like that's yet another person down on a chain of something that maybe I don't think that something like Last Tango in Paris should ever fucking happen again.
Yes.
But like, all of these things kind of get, the bureaucracy, I guess, gets bigger on each part of a project.
There's got to be a happy medium there, right? There's got to be a happy medium where like you can have a singular vision, but also have some basic protections for people to make sure that they're like, like Brando doesn't do like all the coke and decide to rape you in the middle of a scene,
Yeah, or just grab. Brando like found, I think it was the Island of Dr. Moreau that he did this. He found like a bunch of midgets. Like small, like like small, and he just kept them on set with him and like kept insisting that in scenes he was like surrounded by them. And I'm sure that was uncomfortable for both like the the little people that he had surrounding him, and for anybody that was like on set that was like, this doesn't make any sense for the actual film continuity.
Yeah, I remember hearing a story about the main dwarf guy who was with him in the movie. I think his name's Deep Roy. They like people on set said that because Brando took like such a liking to him, he got like a huge head and started acting like a prima donna. Like he started being like acting like Brando.
If the only person that you're interacting with on the set, like your main ally is Brando, like of course you're gonna take that as license to start being another Brando.
I mean, like speaking of prima donnas. I mean, this movie is entirely about like prima donnas, and it's very cool that Steve Coogan in the beginning actually like yells at them, calling them that, and like it's like every single one of them is like acting like a prima donna. And I think that like from the context of the death of the auteur, if you will. Like I love that like this movie at least like has that scene in the movie itself, and that it blew him up with a piece of history, which is kind of fascinating. That it's like this British filmmaker who has like this old school view of like, I'm gonna like torture you, and he's like taking them to the island like Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, but
he's
the hilarious. Wait, I just want to say this. The hilarious thing is that it's a British director that has no actual connection to directing, right? Like it's a British director that has no power. Nobody respects him. Like it's like nobody would dare to call in any auteur's set. No one would dare to call cut because they couldn't cry. Like that wouldn't be something that if you have the respect and the like, you have the respect, and if you're like a powerful person that people are afraid of, they go, hey, can we please cut? And then, you know what I mean? And they're the ones arguing about whether they should, go back to filming it again. And he loses control. And the only person he can take it out on is the guy that has the food tray, like the you know what I mean? Like, so he can only take it out on people that are like, the farthest down, I guess, hierarchically, which if you're looking at, what an auteur director would do, like an auteur director is usually pretty, I mean, a lot of times the people on the lowest rung of a directorial hierarchy, they're like, either they completely ignore or those people are treated fine. It's the people closest to that director that need to be terrified throughout the entire filming. So, so he's trying to act that way without actually having the respect and like the power to act that way, which is what makes it kind of a funny, like, because he could.
So he's kind of like clinging to his last shreds of respect or whatever, like, and he's actually able to kind of bring it back.
There's no respect. There's like it's bottom level. He directs plays. Like that has to be. So anytime like that character is like brought, like that character is like the part
Stage
about
director.
yeah, like literally he's a stage director. All right, I'll shut up, but
no, that's the point. I think the point is that like I feel like his death, especially because it was from, and again, like we talk a lot about forces of nature and like something that happens outside the scope of the film itself. That is I think the only explosive that is not part of any of the crew or anything like that. It's actually from the war or whatever, and it actually blows up and he's gone.
It's from imperialist France. They make sure that that it's not from the war. He stepped on a pre-war. That's the thing I sent you, where they talked about how like
I see. I make the connection now. Damn. Okay.
Yeah. So they were making sure that like there's no culpability, which makes it ironic that they're making this movie in the first place, right? Like they're like, oh, well, people don't say anything anymore. Like in cinema, like you can't say anything. Which sounds like I'm Joe Rogan or something. You can't say anything anymore. They'll cancel you. No, but like
especially if you're a straight white man.
Yeah.
And he was a British director. That's the
Yes, the only thing you're allowed to express is like the swastika tattoo, I suppose. That's why it's like all of them seem to have that. So, I'm just joking.
I did think it was weird too, like from a continuity standpoint too. The problem I always had with the movie too was like Steve Coogan is there, doing Alan Partridge directing a movie, and he's like, we've got cameras everywhere, and he's pointing like at those cameras. He's like, I've got all these different, we got the woods wired with C4 and shit. And like the whole time that like a massive crew was preparing all of this, no one like stumbled upon, because they instantly get discovered by the heroin trade guys.
Yeah.
And also he stepped within 5 feet of the LZ. He fucking steps on a landmine. It's just like no one from the whole setup crew or anything like actually got discovered by the heroin people or anything. It just seems like there was too much. Like I would have rather him be like, they didn't do any planning at all. They're just like, oh, I'm going to shoot it guerrilla style with a camera and go out there. And then they immediately stumble into it. Cause it just seems more implausible to me that they had all
well, I
this
mean,
set up.
presumably it was a very short turnaround from the time that he's freaking out because he thinks he's going to get fired by Tom Cruise. And then like the more Oliver Stone-esque screenwriter, which of course probably would be relegated to that now. I mean, I think that the thing that made Platoon meaningful is that Oliver Stone had actually been in the war. So it makes sense that like, if you strip that away, like there's nothing meaningful about this at all, which, okay, like I get that. But so between then that conversation and actually like going into the jungle, I guess would have been it would be a very quick turnaround, I guess. But the other thing that I would say about it is that it kind of makes sense that, you know, if the guy's faking it, he wouldn't have actually known the location. You know what I mean? Like he would have been quickly like Googling a bunch of locations and then brought them somewhere that there probably would have been a landmine and not, you know, not warn them. But I think this cues up this clip though. Like the fact that, you know, I think this movie could have been a lot stronger if they're making the point that within the system, a non-auteur, I guess, directorial system, like you can no longer say anything because like war realism without any kind of war realism without any kind of context where it's like an anti-war movie doesn't make any sense, right? Like Oliver Stone is kind of making the point that this table's about to fall. That Oliver Stone's kind of making the point that like this is like war is hell. I went through this and this is what it was like. If you're not making that point and it's just a realistic war movie, like who the fuck would want to watch it? Who the fuck would want to watch a realistic pro Vietnam or neutral Vietnam movie that isn't making the point about that?
Oh, I think probably a lot of people would actually enjoy watching that. Like,
yeah, well, if you're making the point in the end that like, you know, if you're faking it and saying, oh, we kind of won, you know what I mean? Like we were destroyed in Vietnam. If you make a realistic movie about like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, like I think there's a lot of people who would watch that lie movie and with like everyone with all the Americans coming out like with like the mission accomplished banner.
Yeah,
I also feel like this movie itself might have gotten made under that pretense as well. Like, I mean, in a kind of way, they do come out victorious, right? Like they don't really like come out in a. I mean, if you were to just like look at the whole arc itself, like they kind of like beat the drug gang, and again, like it's fascinating that like it had to be a drug gang because like if I can like just like quickly draw a parallel with Spike Lee's movie that also involved like stepping on a landmine. The people who they run into, and I mean it's a totally different plot, but like it's a group of people who go back to Vietnam in the present day, and the group of people that they run into are not exactly like drug related or anything like that. I think they're actually part of the army there or something like that. I forget who exactly they are, but here it's kind of interesting that it had to be a drug related group. And the heroes had to, you know, win in the end. And it's kind of like even the scene where Ben Stiller falls down with the, you know, Sergeant Willem Dafoe, I forget the character's name, pose. Even that is a victory pose here because he actually succeeds in doing what he's supposed to do. So it's kind of like a whole like interesting rewrite of history that this movie manages to do by like appearing like a goof up when it's actually like a victorious finish.
But I mean, I think that's kind of the point of it is that like a movie, like I think on some level, I think the movie fails, but I want to put two different points down, I guess. The way that the movie fails is something like that scene in Platoon without the friendly fire, because clearly that's like, you know, it's what happens when like Forrest Gump or something like that is into like that kind of like, you know, that kind of like triumphant Vietnam, in some ways triumphant Vietnam scene or whatever, where they're like, you're my brother after all that, you know what I mean? Or like, so that kind of scene, like that kind of 90s scene, is way more pro-military than would have happened in something like in Apocalypse Now or Platoon or any of the movies that are trying to make an anti-war statement. If you take away all of the anti-war statement from that, of course there's no like Barnes, and like the guy that's supposed to be like Elias can only really be like a like someone that sacrifices themselves for the rest of their platoon, or someone that fucks up, or you know what I mean? So they're removing the context from the actual removing the anti-war context from like a realistic Vietnam War movie, which kind of is a funny joke. The way that it fails is by not like by not ever challenging our military involvement in Vietnam, not ever challenging our intelligence services that continue to literally wage a war in Vietnam long after, you know, the Vietnam War was over. And so like by being completely chicken shit, they're falling into their own. The movie doesn't mean much. Like the movie means that actors are prima donnas and that the auteur you know, era is over. But like it doesn't. It could like you could actually film a movie like this and then actually have like a drug manufacturing like people that think that you're like they're meeting like a CIA contact or something, and you could make the point that the war in Vietnam never actually ended, and that's like a true point. but like, because they don't do something like that, because it's literally happens in the middle of both Iraq and Afghanistan happening, like, the it's the end of the Bush presidency when they're filming it. Like, they never make that point because they want to have as wide an audience as possible. But like the point that they're making throughout this movie is that they want to have as wide an audience as possible with everything now. So there's no auteur cinema anymore. So like the ridiculousness of that, they lose it on themselves.
Well, something similar with, I would say I draw a parallel to Platoon, which is like the point Oliver Stone makes with that movie is like the inner platoon politics got in the way of fighting the righteous war that we could have won, Whereas like in this, it's like a good war movie could have been made if these guys weren't such pussies and fighting with each other and being prima donnas,
Well, I don't think that's the point. I don't think that's the point that Oliver Stone was trying to make. I think he accidentally made it. I think he was trying to make a horrific, like, the Vietnam War was horrific. Nobody knew what the fuck they were doing. We weren't even really there to fight a war. It's unfortunate that the line that he includes in it is like, like we were too busy fighting each other to fight the enemy. I don't think that's what he was trying to say, though. I think it is an anti-war movie. I think it's Oliver Stone grappling with his own involvement in a war that he didn't believe in.
Yeah, but I think that it's like if I'm viewing it through my own anti-war lens, it's like the nascent, like the state of that. Like when I first leave the military and I come back from Afghanistan and stuff, I for years try to justify my own involvement in a weird in a weird way, like about like reconciling like the friends that I lost and the things that I did and saw and trying to figure out, give it value and have it have meaning. But like I pretty quickly did away with that after a few years. And like, I don't know if Oliver Stone ever has, based upon some of the interviews that I watched, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like from the way that he portrays that experience and even describes it in interviews to this day, it doesn't, I feel like he hasn't learned the lessons that he probably should have.
I think that he believes he has. And a lot of times there's kind of a lazy, like, once the question of what we should have actually done comes up, I think Oliver Stone always fucks up, pretty much. Because I remember having a conversation after watching JFK. We did it on This Is Revolution, and like, the answer to the question, like, oh, what would have happened if if JFK hadn't been assassinated? He was like, oh, well, there would have been Robert Kennedy and the Vietnam War would have been over, and it's like, that's not what would have happened. Like, we would have continued with exactly what we're doing. Like, at some point, probably JFK would have folded, but like, I probably buy into the idea that the CIA probably killed him because he was literally going against the CIA for the first time in history. But that's not proof that for another 8 years he would have, or another 5 years at least, he would have continued to go against the CIA. Like, that's not something that's been proven by any president in history. Like, look at Jimmy Carter, who was probably like the most, he was never anti-CIA, but like, he was kind of challenging our involvement in certain places. He was public about kind of saying, hey, we need to tone it down a little bit. But then he still got involved in plenty of things. He didn't disband the CIA. And I don't think that there's any proof that JFK would have either. But I do think that the CIA at the time was like petty enough that they probably would have assassinated him because they were assassinating people around the globe.
And he was only slightly critical. Like he was just a little bit less of a psycho than they wanted him to be. Like RFK was in his cabinet and was literally talking about we should do a false flag so we can go to war with Cuba at certain points. You know what I mean? But like they just weren't on a fast enough timeline.
There's actually like pretty much every book about our Cuban involvement that actually interviews like CIA operatives. They're like, no, RFK was pushing us harder than any of us wanted to go on Fidel Castro assassination plots. I don't know. So I wanted to play this finally now that my table isn't almost falling over. This is about writing Tropic Thunder, and I think this is because every time I've seen an interview with Ben Stiller talking about it, he doesn't really say much about the actual writing process or like the movies they were even inspired by. I even listened to the DVD commentary, like, and I have clips of that. So like, they never really say anything about the process of writing it. He doesn't. That it's not like a universalist, I guess, perspective. This is a little bit more informing, I think.
I was a big, huge fan of that show, the Ben Stiller show. So when he came to see the play I was doing, to see his girlfriend, I just fanned out of her and just sort of quoted lines back to him and was just very stoked to meet him. But it ended up turning out that we sort of had a similar sense of humor. And he was the one who like really kind of encouraged me to write. He was like, you should write something. And I had written a few things that I showed him, and he thought the dialogue was really funny. He's like, you should just write something. We should do something together, basically. And I was like, great. And we had sort of done smaller things together. And then he had this idea that the original concept for Tropic Thunder, he's like, I don't know where it goes or what it looks like, but basically the original idea is a bunch of sort of dumb Hollywood actors go to make a Vietnam War movie and sort of go through the boot camp experience and whatever, and then come back to Los Angeles, and they're all like in their shrink's office with PTSD, like haha, and it's hilarious. It's a great sort of germ of an idea. And me and Ben are obviously huge fans of that genre of real war movies, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now. It was sort of like, well, wouldn't it be also funny if we actually went with them for the experience of making that movie? So then that became the idea. You know, okay, they're going to go make this movie in the jungle, and obviously things go wrong. We just thought it would be really funny if you were to, the idea of making a big, bloated Hollywood war movie that's completely mishandled, miscast, has too much money, became the idea. We watched a lot of, and this is no disrespect to any of the actors that did this movie, but we watched a lot of the DVD extras of Platoon and Hamburger Hill, you know, like of the actors and the way in their sort of EPKs would talk about, you know, like what it was like to work with Oliver Stone. God bless them. It's sort of what you have to do in order to do those movies. But it was like, you don't understand, like when we were shooting it was like war. You just kind of go like, oh my God, it's so not war. You know, except you're staying in a hotel, and except you're never going to die, and except you're never. So we just thought it was really funny how seriously these actors sort of took themselves. And again, they used to do these sort of boot camps where they'd sort of, Dale Dye would wake them up at 5 a.m. with firecrackers and be like, congratulations, you're all dead. You know, now what are you going to do? You know, you're not in Hollywood anymore. You're a soldier. And so they would all take it very seriously. We just thought that was hilarious.
Put on your war faces, gentlemen. Now, let's go and make the greatest war movie ever.
Yeah.
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 All right.
And then we just sort of came up with this cast that, you know, we threw together. We thought, what's the worst possible casting choice on every level? That's basically how the script sort of started to take form. And then we just tossed that script back and forth to each other over the course of years. And just like we'd write a scene, he'd write a scene, I'd write a scene, and we'd sort of punch each other's stuff up. And then eventually we had a script.
How much?
How much what?
How much?
What's with Mandy Moore at the end there?
Yeah, it was going through each movie that he had helped write or direct, and there was like, it was extremely jarring to end it on his last line. So I think I just kept the how much in there.
I was just confused. I was confused. It's what the fuck is happening? I like him a lot, by the way. I loved HBO's Leftovers that he was the star of. I fucking loved that show. I thought it was very good.
I kind of want to. Yeah, I kind of want to like start off with a little bit of a curveball in like, you know, asking the question of I don't know how much I buy this whole like you know, he came up with this idea and he came to me, blah blah blah. It's like the last 3 movies that have been about like war or kidnapping or some kind of, you know, Hollywood makes a movie or pretends to make a movie in the war area to promote war. I feel like there was Tropic Thunder started this, I feel like, and then after that there was Argo, which was the same thing, and then there was The Interview, which was also the same thing. It's all like an intersection of show business and
have you ever read
the
have you ever read the I think it's Common Dreams. There was an article about The Interview where they talked to Seth Rogen, and then they talked to this guy that Seth Rogen had hired, which Seth Rogen and James Franco and like, you know, whoever else was like directly, like Judd Apatow, like they'd hired some guy that worked with the Obama administration on North Korea policy. And which, you know, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I think every director really does this now. Like you hire somebody that you're like, hey, how would this actually happen? Like, we're going to be screenwriting for this. How would this specific thing happen? But it was like a guy that wanted war with North Korea in the Obama administration. It had been like dismissed at one point. they had
so
like
here, like, I mean, I feel like here is where I'm going a little conspiratorial. Like, I don't know how much I buy this story in the first place. Like, I mean, of course, this is the history that, like, you know, they want to provide us with by saying, hey, yeah, this Ben Stiller had this cool idea of like, oh, we all love the same war movies. Yeah, everybody knows. I mean, like, you know, they're all actors. We get that. He can make this story up in like 5 seconds. Like, of course, you know, press kits and all are not lost on us. But at the same time, I kind of have to wonder, like, because like the last 3 movies that kind of have this kind of slapstick, you know, treatment of war that I can remember kind of had a similar politics, I feel like. And it doesn't seem coincidental, like that some of the production company names, I mean, this is DreamWorks, you know, like DreamWorks is like SKG, which is Spielberg, and I forget who the K stands for, and G is like Geffen, David Geffen, which basically this is like a production company that like essentially I think like, you know, has like deep pockets, and you know, Harvey Weinstein is not the only producer in Hollywood who had like deep pockets or deep ties. So I kind of wonder, like, you know, about the origin story of something like this itself, because of how casually it treats the subject. As funny as it is for me, and as much as I enjoy it, like I am like also a part of my brain is also going like, should I be a little worried of how much fun I'm having watching this thing, because it's just like hilarious the from start to finish.
I mean, I think that and I'll let everybody else comment on this really fast after I just mentioned this. I think in this, it's not just that it's pro or anti-military or anti-Vietnam. I mean, I don't think that there's really either one. Like, nobody really involved in this, once you find out that the, like, you know, the Four-Leaf character is a fraud, is from the military. I mean, a more honest one would have had like military people on set, I think. Like, you know what I mean? Like filming, or at least consulting in some way, like helping out with it. Like, there's a military Hollywood like industrial complex. Like, everybody knows that at this point.
Right.
Would have been way funnier if they killed Dale Dye the way they killed Steve Coogan off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, get over here, maggots, and he steps on a mine, and his head it fucking explodes. Been so cool. They should have killed the troops for real.
It's time to Dale Dye.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, but so I think this is devoid of all context. Like, I don't think there's any I don't think you leave this movie feeling like it's pro-military, and I don't think you leave this movie feeling like it's anti-military. You leave it with no opinion either way, on purpose, I think. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that then
I think I feel like this movie is a critique on the film industry wrapped in a war movie, and I don't know how much you're gonna get trying to figure out its war analysis, because it doesn't like the war is just the canvas that the actual, I think, art of the movie is painted on. And so it is blurry, it is obscure, but it's not necessary by the time it's done.
I remember actually, Marcus makes a good point, because like I remember actually seeing another interview shortly after this came out where they were talking about exactly that. Like, let's do a satire of the film industry, and they were trying to figure out what genre, and they figured like war would be the most heightened genre, and there was also a lot of history from those horrifying torture sessions that like Oliver Stone and Coppola put people through. It was a great backdrop to do exactly that. I think that like that's part of the reason too, probably, like Marcus says, like if they're like, no, we're not trying to say anything about war. Let's keep it to the film industry. So let's literally strip every little bit of like we can't even have a claymore that they step on. It's got to be an Indochina remnant kind of thing. Let's remove all of that. So it's just strictly a film set. They're drug lords. They're not communists. You know, like they remove all just so it can be funny. It's heroin. It's funny. You know, he's addicted to heroin. It's so cool.
Which, I mean, like this is where too is like this whole like if they do bounce back and forth thing, like I could see them starting out with, oh, it's rebels, but it's like you've got this character with a drug problem, and it's really easy to turn a rebel camp into some heroin manufacturer, right?
You're saying it's like, really easy to turn to heroin in times of crisis?
I mean, if you knew some, especially like a lot of Iraq vets, like
listen, I know
yeah, it is.
No, I know lots of Yeah, no, we're literally in the middle
Like
of
in that situation,
I'm,
it is.
I'm a 27-year-old in the middle of the opioid crisis. Trust me, like half the people I went to high school with are addicted to heroin at this point.
I walked
It's
through a
sad.
shit ton
Well,
of
no, and
poppy
even
fields
like
in
so
Afghanistan.
that's the thing too is like I know plenty of like there's like a good amount of vets that like that in country is where they developed their habits.
Yep.
Which I mean makes sense, but also I mean the commentary I guess of this movie could have like it seems like it touched. It seems like it got a little bit like it got just ridiculously close to talking about U.S. involvement within like within Vietnam and within South Asia or East Asia, I guess within East Asia, like Vietnam, like the fact that there still are like the fact that heroin manufacturing is so big there comes from the destabilization from the Vietnam War. Like it feels like it gets very, very, very close to revealing something. The fact that we have the DEA there, making sure that what I mean. They're like, oh, are you part of the DEA? Like that's an American like department. Like you're really not going to touch it. Like you'd think that like even you think that someone at first was like, are you part of the CIA or something like that? You know what I mean? Like special operations, something like that. And they're like, no, we can't say that. Like just make it the DEA, like a fucking episode of Breaking Bad or something.
Yep.
Like.
Yeah, exactly. Even that is like a less political entity is the DEA. Drugs are easier. The guys protecting the drugs is easier to deal with than any sort of political rebel. And then make it the DEA, not the CIA, because
like make sure it's not like because there are DEA people within that area, like within any area really that has a drug problem, but like a drug manufacturing problem. But look at like the areas that do have poppy manufacturing as like their main thing. It's like number one, the Golden Triangle, which is a real like part of Asia, but then also like it comes from like Afghanistan.
Yes,
like there's
the country we were occupying for 20 years was one of the main fucking poppy producers in the world.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah, I was not even sure if like that was a kind of geographically deliberately off kind of representation just to like throw a sort of shine a light on what's going on in Afghanistan. And also like I was kind of fascinated. Like Ben Stiller has his moments, man. Like Ben Stiller somehow like manages to, I think, win your heart. I feel like every single one of these movies, like he always like has this one last like finish. He'll take it to a place, and I feel like he kind of did that with the kid he wanted to adopt. Yep. That he felt like it was his son, and I was like, yo, man, of all of the things. There's a child soldier who's like basically kicking Jack Black's ass in the whole thing, and he like recognizes him, and he does this kind of comedy sketch for them, which is kind of like hilarious for me, like that he actually plays this really dumb hillbilly character that they're all laughing at, and it's like
it's not it's his R word.
I know, but like it's a simple Jack. Like it's like a Forrest Gump character, like, and I'm like, it's a person that is being ridiculed. Like you do see that, like, they're all laughing at him, and then right after that they beat him and they're dragging him off the thing, and like it's kind of funny that like yet he goes to this place and there's this little boy that he kind of wants to adopt and take home for some reason. And I was like, wow, it's just absurd. Like, and because he feels like he has his freedom to take it in any absurd direction, I feel like he's one of the few people who always like exploits that. Like he does that in Zoolander, and he also did that in this movie. And like somehow, and like, even keeping Robert Downey, for example, in blackface the whole time, it's like the kind of risk that you kind of have to have like a level of crazy that, I mean, talk about auteur. I mean, like maybe Ben Stiller is being self-referential and like saying that he is being a new kind of like,
Well, he's doing what he does in Zoolander. Like he's doing what he did in Zoolander with himself. You know what I mean? Like in Zoolander, he's a male model that's kind of past their prime, and he's like in the kind of what we think of as like almost like a feminine but vapid role, and he's putting himself into that role as a male model, and he's on the wrong side of that. In this movie, he's an action star, which is a very similar, like, you know what I mean? So he's a guy that's like made a franchise, which is really funny. This is the same year Iron Man came out. So like, you know what I mean? So like Robert Downey Jr. was the even more new like US military backed version of the action star that like in the 80s would have been like Schwarzenegger or something. But he's taking this kind of action star and he's kind of, I mean, number one, he's disconnected from everything. He's completely vapid. He's disconnected from having a family. Like there's that really sad line in the beginning where they're like, he's talking like Tyra Banks is like, you know, you're on the wrong side of 40. You're you have no friend, like no family. Someone close to you said this could be your last role. And he's like, someone said they were close to me. He's reaching out. And that's the reason that he's probably been so successful at like making 6 of these big like blockbuster franchise movies at this point is because he's like really successful at it because he doesn't have a friend, like friends or family or like, you know what I mean? He's just disconnected from everything. He's just like, they can pour whatever they want into him at this point because he doesn't really exist as a person that way. So when he has the opportunity to like get a family, you know, to get a son, he like jumps on that opportunity, despite the fact that like, you know, red flag emoji, red flag emoji, red flag emoji. It's a kid that's in a fucking heroin manufacturing ring. Like that's not that kid is still alive for a fucking reason.
And he says, I have a connection with them, even like his audience, even though they literally just beat the shit out of him every 5 minutes. They're like doing a water torture on him or beating him with the AK.
I mean, he's kind of Tom Cruise, which is hilarious that Tom Cruise agreed to join this because like Tom Cruise is like 80s Mission Impossible stuff. Like now they're remaking it, but this was kind of before that remake culture, I think, in some ways. Like they were remaking some things, but like, you know, at the early part of that, like these franchise stars that in the 80s had like burned out, you know what I mean, and had to go do other things. He's that, but then without any like, you know, nothing's tethering him down.
I mean, this kind of like brings me to the blackface performance and like all. I feel like artistically it gets justified. I mean, aside from the, you know, the craziness of it, I think you kind of touched upon something interesting in pointing out like how they're all like interchanged. Like Ben Stiller is playing the Tom Cruise role, and Tom Cruise is like playing a role that Jack Black could have probably like played in his sleep or something, you know. And like I think he could have been like a very compelling Les Grossman himself, and like, you know, and so on. And like you could kind of imagine Robert Downey in a different role and all of that. And I feel what is also kind of fascinating is how like the black character in the movie exposes the fact that Robert Downey is not black, and he kind of points out that like you are they had the budget for one black actor and they chose you, and it's kind of like it's a very almost ironically I feel like inaccurate observation because he's also part of the movie, but I think it also reveals the fact that they deliberately cast each person in the wrong role to point something out, and that's what like makes it fascinating. Like, what are they trying to point out here?
Well, this is like where I think the movie does a great job of holding up the mirror to Hollywood, you know, because even in this, like, you never go full R word, that he literally spells it out where Hollywood draws the line.
Uh-huh.
You know, he lists movies, boom, 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 Oscar or whatever, that like, but nothing.
Yeah,
you never do it, you know. And it's like, but also in that moment, you've got a dude who is in blackface telling somebody you never go full R word, and like, but that's the thing is like that's what I think is
the response
good about
back.
This movie is that
the response back should have been like if I was Ben Stiller, the response back would have been, well, you never go full N word. That would have.
But that's, I mean, like, that's like the thing that was like you're never going to like that's like, but that's what I think is like film is great is that like it's okay for Ben Stiller to make fun of Tom Cruise because Tom Cruise is also like it's basically all of them really showing up to the mirror to the industry that they all exist in, and admittedly some of them do these things because Jack Black is making fun of, you know, like it's like the clumps type of thing, but like Jack Black also is that kind of comedian in so many of the films, right? He's and so that's where I think it was like And I know, like, yeah. Well, actually, I don't know if you're going to play the clip where
yeah. I mean, this is
the
Joe Rogan quite concerned during this interview that you can't do blackface anymore. So that is one underlying thing of this interview. But I do think it's interesting that the point that they're making is satirical. Like, you know, like there is a black actor in this film that is legitimately black and not Robert Downey Jr. that isn't getting like a pass because he's like a method actor. So, you know, and they're clearly making that kind of point. Like you know, throughout the entire movie. But there's I don't remember if I clipped it or not, but there's like a part of the DVD commentary because I was listening to it because I couldn't find Ben Stiller actually ever saying anything meaningful about this movie besides to be like, oh, like, you know, I made Tropic Thunder. Like there was never, like, I don't even know if Ben Stiller actually legitimately wrote this. He doesn't have anything to say about it. There's never a moment where he has anything meaningful to say about this movie. So there's a moment within the DVD commentary, number one, Robert Downey Jr. is still doing his fake black voice in the DVD commentary. And they also say that they're talking to the guy that, like, Brandon T, that played, you know, the guy. So they're talking to him about what they can get away with as white people doing blackface in a movie, making fun of blackface, which kind of just feels a little bit too on the nose. Like because a lot of this movie is improv, and they kept being like, "Are we going too far?" Which seems like if you're gonna make a satire, like asking the one black person on set, like, "Listen, we have one black person on set. Are we going too far?" is also in itself doing what you're parodying. When the person calls
Listen,
you
we do
out.
it at Left Flank Vets all the time. Okay.
All right. Well, this is Robert Downey Jr. and old Joe Ivermectin over here talking about blackface.
When Ben called and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing," and, you know, I think maybe Sean Penn had passed on it or something like that, possibly wisely. And I thought, yeah, I'll do that, and I'll do that after Iron Man. And then I started thinking, this is a terrible idea. Wait a minute. And I thought, well, hold on, dude, get real here. Where is your heart? And my heart is, I get to be black for a summer in my mind. So there's something in it for me. The other thing is I get to hold up to nature the insane self-involved hypocrisy of artists and what they think they're allowed to do on occasion. Just my opinion. And also Ben, who is a masterful artist and director, probably the closest thing to a Charlie Chaplin that I've experienced in my lifetime. He writes, he directs, he acts. If you had seen him when he was directing this movie, you would have been like, I'm watching David Lean, I'm watching Chaplin, I'm watching Coppola. He knew exactly what the vision for this was. He executed it. It was impossible to not have it be an offensive nightmare of a movie. And 90% of my black friends are like, dude, that was great.
What about the other 10%?
You know, I can't disagree with them, but I know where my heart was.
Yeah.
And I think that it's never an excuse to do something that is out of place and not of its time. But to me, it was just it was a blasting cap on. And by the way, I think White Chicks came out pretty soon after that. Yeah. And I was like, I love that. Yeah. I was like, that was great. Yeah. So, you know.
Well, it might be the last time we see that, unless things change. It seems like no one can really. I don't think you could do blackface anymore. I mean, we almost lost the Prime Minister of Canada because he did brownface. He pretended to be Saudi Arabian, right? Yeah. He did Arabian Nights in high school or something like that.
It's an interesting and necessary meditation on where is the pendulum, why is the pendulum right.
Yeah.
Where is the pendulum maybe cutting a little into what could be perceived as heart in the right place, openness of its time. But again, I mean, you know, there's a morality clause here on this planet, and it's a big price to pay. And I think having a moral psychology is job one. So sometimes you just got to go, yeah, you know, I effed up. Again, not in my defense, but Tropic Thunder was about how wrong that is.
Yes.
So I take exception.
No, I think you could do it today. I think you could. I think it could be done today. There would be so much outrage, but there would also be people cheering. And if we boiled down all the bullshit and got to the actual result of what the film did, it's fucking hilarious. To this day, I watched it again about a year and a half ago. It might be the last time we'll ever see a studio take a chance on a guy wearing blackface and the prolific use of the word retard. Those are two things.
And by the way, that's Ben. The funny thing too was all the heat got deflected to Ben and Simple Jack.
Yeah,
that's what people were pissed off about. And I go, great. But you never know when it's going to be your time in the barrel. You know, sometimes life just says, you know what? And I've been on both sides of that coin. Sometimes life just says, you're a symbol now.
Did you have anybody that was telling you not to do it? Were there a bunch of agents or anyone who was like,
my mother was horrified.
So yeah, Joe Rogan really wants to see more blackface in movies.
That's the thing is like that's like really disturbing. Is like Joe Rogan just wants to see it, you know? And like, yeah, dude, like what the fuck?
This might be the last time that we ever get to see blackface.
That's that seems like I can understand if this was like a generational thing, you know, like if and not necessarily in blackface, but if like there's some artists that
I think
were
blackface
trying
is
to
a generational thing. To be fair,
well, no, I'm like going outside of like specifically blackface, but like if there are a group of artists that say we need to show the industry what they're doing, you know, in which case like just do it well, right? Just do it well, and then you know like make sure it lands. But like like Joe Rogan is just like a child who's just like giddy to see something that he knows is offensive, which I mean
and like literally just the point, like right over his head. Like Robert Downey Jr. I also did the way Robert Downey Jr. talked about that I didn't like at all either, because he was like, when you say like I know it was in my heart, like okay, you're talking about Kirk Lazarus playing Osiris. Like you're missing the point. You just said it, man. The point is that's fucking stupid and ridiculous, and no one should do that. And you're like, but I knew it was in my heart. That's what Kirk Lazarus would say.
I mean, like I feel like but
that
100%. I feel like he was like, not to defend him or anything, like, but I feel like he was saying, I know what I was trying to do, you know, I know what the point is, you know, but like,
talked about it.
The way he does talk, I mean, like, but he's one of them, right? His speech is going to be like an artist, but like he just has, I guess, that one layer of realization that like we're all fucking ridiculous.
What good does that do, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like functionally how, but also at the, you know, like what realization does he even have? Like here he's saying that like he had it in his heart that he didn't want to do it like this. But I also feel like he was nominated for some kind of award that year. Wouldn't that be a little bit of a slap on the face? It's like, you know, I mean, like functionally, I'm not saying this is still like a well-performed role. I don't want to sound like I'm discounting the performance.
He never said
all.
He didn't want to do it. In his defense, he never said it was something like, he said he was conflicted about the idea of like getting canceled for doing it, kind of, you know what I mean? Like I never felt like within that conversation there was ever a point where he said I shouldn't have done it. It's like, what will the response to having done it be? The thing that I think is interesting is that was I mean, because it's on the Joe Rogan podcast, it's a more recent thing, so it's like post Marvel fame, where it's like, you know, every single person has to like Robert. Like, I wonder what he would have said about it, not knowing, because this movie came out like after he had filmed Iron Man. Iron Man was coming out. Like, I don't think Iron Man had come out yet.
Yeah.
So, and he was also recovering from his own intense drug addiction, like, because he had a moment where he burned out completely. Like, Iron Man was his like triumphant return to being a celebrity that way. So it's interesting that he's cast kind of in a role that, like, number one, he does have like countless drug addictions, has that reputation as someone that's like kind of a brawler, also has that reputation of being like now an action movie star. He's kind of all of those roles combined. He's the 21st century man with Hollywood here. Also, White Chicks came out in 2003. So when he
the
said,
white chicks
come out."
comparison too,
Yeah.
like, have you seen white chick? What about white entertainment television? Why is there
White
no
Chicks came out before? Like, no, but like the point he's making is like, oh, it's right around the time of White Chicks. It's not.
No, it's
like,
not. It's just also not the same at all.
But I also like I kind of take offense
They
a
can
little
dress up
bit.
as me, but I can't dress up as them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, fuck you, dude. Shut up. Wrong.
See,
Joe Rogan's
I
like,
kinda-
yeah, I will never be able to see that again. We will never be able to jerk off to blackface ever again without watching.
No,
old
I
things.
kind of don't want to go to that extreme of like, you know, making it seem like that's the intention. But like, I kind of do take offense to the fact that the discussion, even in this level, it doesn't get to the level of like, why was it artistically a justified choice? Like, and I think like even in the case of, I don't want to like, you know, take it someplace where you don't want to take it. But like even in the whole like conversation around Dave Chappelle,
You can't even
special,
say anything anymore. You can't even take it where you don't want to take it.
No, the thing is that like the conversation isn't about how is the statement justified in a work of art, or like is it like, are you just gonna say that like you can say whatever the fuck you want? But I think there's always like a question of payoff and like what is the justification behind like doing something like this. I think that Ben Stiller can justify it artistically without like having to resort to like, well, why not, you know? And that's when you start sounding like a jerk off. You don't even need to go there. But that's the point. Like, you don't need to rue the fact that like, oh my god, you can't
go
do
there
this.
anymore.
The thing that like kind of justifies it for me is that it's still happening in both scenarios of blackface and like the Simple Jack thing.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like just last year there was like or within this year, you know, there's a movie about a girl with autism, I believe,
Oh, yes.
and they like, so people were like,
cast
well, why
Ben
didn't you cast someone who is autistic? And the director lady was like, well, they're too difficult to work with. And it was like,
which is the opposite of any point that should be happening about a movie about someone with autism.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, they're normal people. Oh, not on the set though.
yeah, no, and I think, I mean, like, I feel like you know,
But there was
there's
this
like a lot of like comic book or like, you know, or anime stuff that gets made into movies, and then it's like only
It's
Scarlett
whitewashed.
Johansson can play those roles.
So I think some of that has a very different reason than like I was talking last night. I mean, one that had a huge backlash to this is Doctor Strange, and I was talking to Varn last night about this. Doctor Strange, the reason that they cast Tilda Swinton is because like the markets that they're trying to promote these movies to are diverse enough that like one big market is like obviously like China, you know what I mean? Like, and China's not going to want like an older Tibetan man. Like they'll be like, this is an older Tibetan man that's like conquering evil. Like, you know what I mean? Like the CCP doesn't, which I was talking to Varn last night and made the point that like, listen, the Marvel is doing the most deferential possible things to the U.S. military. Like, you know what I mean? Like U.S. military has first, second, third, and fourth final cut on anything. So I'm just saying, like, when things become too marketized or whatever, like, you know, like casting Tilda Swinton as a Tibetan man and then allowing the movie to go to like Chinese audiences, like, you know, from a profit margin, I guess, standpoint, makes sense. But like these conversations about representation don't take on that part of it too. And I think that this movie could have done that. Like how many different when a movie gets cast, right? There are so many considerations for not just whether the movie is going to play well in the US, but also whether the movie is going to play well in other places. Are you going to piss off the US military? Are you going to piss off another country that you like is going to put a huge investment into the movie, like audience wise? You know what I mean? So all of a sudden you're having all of these people take different things from these blockbuster movies. So when it's something like the Vietnam War, when in the 70s and 80s, like we were like, listen, we shouldn't have gone into Vietnam. We all know in America we shouldn't have gone into Vietnam. Like, this is a mistake. You had a very small window where you could do that. Before in the 90s, every war movie started having like a cast of just people with brands that they were bringing in, like, oh, like we want to promote this brand. We want to promote this brand. We want to promote this brand. We're going to just shove them together in a movie and not actually worry about the casting of it. So I think that this movie
I got this booty sweat from Da Nang.
No, but this movie starts to make that point, but then falls short of it because of its own its own obsession with that same thing. Like if it was an independent movie, not Ben Stiller, if someone was making an independent movie around a similar topic, right? Like that wasn't subject to the same incentives, the same restrictions as anything produced by Hollywood, it would be a movie that literally pointed out like the CIA's involvement in everything with Vietnam. The reason that we're still fighting a war there. Like, it's not just that, like, oh, guys with machine guns are there producing heroin. Isn't that crazy? Wow. It's like, no, our involvement within the Vietnam War, and then the fact that we went into Cambodia, the fact that we went to Laos, like, you know what I mean? Like, all of these different places and destabilized them completely, bombed the shit out of them, killed massive amounts of people that we didn't even have permission, like, to be in those countries by any, like nobody knew. Like, Kissinger, like, Kissinger and Nixon's, like, secret, like, oh, let's go bomb countries that we're not part of and just pretend that was an accident. You know what I mean? Like all of that. That's why there's still this war going on. So the war never ended. So if you're gonna make the point that the war never ended, and that, like, you know, whatever point you want to make, you know, I think that they fail on that level.
Yeah, I think they just avoided it entirely, so they could stick with look how weird we are in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
I do love the Robert Downey Jr. thing, the blackface thing. I fucking love it when I see some like fucking Zoomer be like, this was okay, and post a screenshot of of Robert. It's like, watch the movie. Yes, he's a clown. He's an idiot.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And there's something though that like did strike me. Throughout the movie, you also have you've got Al Pacino like trying to like tell him like, dude, this is not cool. He literally completely ignores it, or any type of thing, up until the point where he actually starts worrying about somebody else, right? So they see the guy, they see the guy in trouble, and that's the first moment where he looks and says, oh, this, my bad. I think he said something was like my bad or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
are we cool though?
Well, are we cool? He's like, nah, not really. You know, but then there's like the process of like through then, like before he wipes off his makeup, there's like a few more processes where he's like walking back his blackface, you know, as he's like realizing like, ah, shit. And it's like, why are you still doing the voice? And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, he literally can't stop. He's like, you're confused. He's like, I am confused.
I'm confused.
There is. I mean, one funny thing is that I think if somebody offered Jared Leto a movie in like a similar vein where he had to go into blackface, Jared Leto would be like the one person that would still take that movie.
He would. You're absolutely right. That is the kind of psycho. He is that guy. He thinks he has his own cult. He has a cult that he started as a joke. It's a joke cult that is just a real cult now. Also a huge like, pedo, by the way.
You guys are trapped here. This is a cult. Oh, you're laughing. Can I leave? Yeah. Oh no, you can't. You cannot fucking leave.
But keep laughing.
You know, he does. He doesn't go full R word by that definition. I think because he actually wipes off the. No. With the blackface, he doesn't go full R word with the blackface because he wipes off the makeup in the end, and he kind of like reveals that he's an Australian blonde dude. And I guess like that's supposed to be like the self-referential. You know, if you're courting the Oscars, then you kind of also have to like humanize yourself a little bit, no matter what piece of shit you're playing. I mean, that's why like you could win an Oscar for playing Winston Churchill of all people, like. You know,
they're not filming that part though. That's like an actual. What I took all of those parts for is that everybody involved, and I'll end soon. I wanted to play one more quick thing, but after that I'll end because I guess my brother has to come sleep in this room. I have like a crazy family situation going on this week with my mom's making like the money that like her massive like the most money that she makes during the fall season is that she does the Sheep and Wool Festival as a weaving. Like she sells weaves, which is a cool job. I'm not gonna lie, but so the thing that I would say about I lost my train of thought. Sorry, I don't know.
Do you want to show us that
You want to
clip?
play a clip?
Yeah. So this is the clip. This is the what auteur cinema was. And I'm sure at the end of like in the middle of the clip, I'll remember what I was trying to say. But so this is the Martin Sheen Heart Attack. I think this is what they're kind of parodying by a lot of this movie, like how far you can really go, or how far you could really go as a auteur director, which is kind of what.
Holy shit!
Yeah, but like so by taking the Steve Coogan character and putting it kind of in the role of Coppola in this situation, and moving the filming itself to Vietnam, you know what I mean? Like like they were in the Philippines because the Philippines were a lot more safe, I think, to shoot in than Vietnam would have been. And on top of that, like, you know, all of these characters, delegations, I guess, whether it's whether it's Nick Nolte as like an Oliver Stone type character, or everybody's kind of delegated to these roles that Steve Coogan, if this was an auteur film, would be playing. Is interesting because it's kind of making the point like you can't make cinema like this anymore, which then turns around and then someone like fucking Joe Rogan is like, oh well, you can't do blackface anymore, like, you know what I mean? So it's like it's this never ending cycle, I think, where it's like, but like it's an all right point. It's an interesting point with Tropic Thunder, but obviously Tropic Thunder never really makes that point in the way that they should outright because they don't want to offend anybody. Like, you know what I mean? Their filming doesn't want to offend anybody. And then I think every person that's asked a question about this movie, like in an interview to at least most of the people that were like involved in filming and writing it, was like, oh, are you sad that like now you can't offend people anymore? This movie is inoffensive. It's toothless. Like it's the toothlessness of making a movie in Hawaii with full SAG rules, complaining about the fact that you can't make a movie anymore where you bring people into the jungle and just torture them.
Then the only controversial things about it, even at that time, were like they said the R word and made a fake movie about Ben Stiller playing a mentally handicapped person, and it obviously being bad and offensive as the point, and this as the same thing is happening with Robert Downey Jr. doing it in blackface, also being bad and offensive as the point, and then people just getting hung up on missing that point entirely, and nobody
ever got. I don't think anyone ever really got upset about Robert Downey Jr. in blackface. The two things that ever really got brought up are, oh, this is okay when it's justifying something else, whatever that something else is, and then people like Joe Rogan who are like, aren't you sad you can't do a blackface movie anymore? Mm-hmm. Like those are the only two times that gets brought up. Like nobody ever tried to cancel Robert Downey Jr.
There were some writers that like, had like, I don't know off the top of my head, but there's like, I mean, definitely like there's an article in response that I remember, and then someone was trying to like really like say like this is so wrong, you can't do it, and like there was another some black writer just comes over top and says like no, like this is why it's okay, and it's just like, I mean, that's where I think like the movie doesn't really work. I think like because the point that they are I think that they're trying to make that, hey, like Hollywood filmmakers, like you're a little too ridiculous with the way that you're trying to portray people, or like who you get to portray other people, and that's something that like Hollywood still like they just keep going along. And I think, and I mean like, yeah, like maybe not so much in regards to blackface. Like
I think there's like a good 99% consensus.
Yeah, but when it does come to people with any type of like mental disability or any type of issues, like then that's something where they're like literally the lady said these people are too hard to deal with when casting someone with autism.
And then literally just had like a Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, there's like a string of them too. Like and Robert Downey Jr. brings them up in that scene where he's saying you never go full R word.
I'm saying forward from this movie, yeah. Like,
yeah. But so like there's a string of those movies But I think the joke I think also in this is that Ben Stiller's character is nakedly for the first time probably in his career, like trying to win an Oscar by playing a fully R-word person. You know what I mean? Like, so the fact that it's not just that like he's making fun of the fact these movies exist. The naked cash grab for him, or the naked what Kirk Lazarus' character can do very easily, which is the only reason why he cares about the movie at all. You know what I mean? Like, which is why he's the lead person, is because he thinks maybe he can win an Oscar in blackface. So it's him trying to win an Oscar in blackface, and then Ben Stiller as like a second degree, like maybe I should try to win an award. Guess what? I'm gonna be fully R-word in this Simple Jack movie. You know what I mean? Like trying to kind of emulate what all of these other like seriously like at the time at least were seen as prestige movies were doing. Which now, I mean, I don't know. Like I one movie there's the one where Leonardo DiCaprio and Johnny Depp, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I think they're referencing when they're like when he talks about the mother dying or whatever. Like that's another movie they reference, and Leonardo DiCaprio in that. Like Leonardo DiCaprio couldn't. I mean, well now he's Leonardo DiCaprio. So, but like no actor could do like that. You know, I don't even like they barely even like I don't know. So the fact that like they're kind of mocking the fact that these movies are kind of done in a row, all kind of winning these awards, and then like Ben Stiller's character nakedly tries to grab for an Oscar by going, oh, they've all done this, I'm going to do my own version of that. How can I hang out with mentally handicapped people a bunch and then make my own version? And then he's upset that he doesn't, he isn't up for
it's like the worst movie in the world.
Yeah. Well, he's just a terrible actor too. Like,
that's
the point. Like he's doing like this offensive portrayal of a handicapped person that isn't a real thing either, like it's just like like with the teeth and the hair. It's like that's not recognizable portrayal of anyone with a disability either.
And then one of the kind of
the thing you talk about in The Office, like the background of Matthew McConaughey's office, he's like got a hammer chasing a butterfly, and his arm just circles all.
And when he gets off the phone with him, he says, "Say it with me, you make me happy." Which makes it funnier because you would assumably think, like in the real world, like not only did he make this movie, he's now known for this movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's known for this movie to the point where like people quote unquote close to him, which I think is a big part of. I mean, this is a very neoliberal movie, and this is the last big point I'll make about it before I throw to everyone for like final thoughts. But this is an extremely neoliberal movie in the sense of, number one, like all history and context have been stripped from it, which is supposed to be the joke, but then the actual movie, all history and context have been stripped from it. You know what I mean? Which is like it's hard to make that realization. But at the same time, like each person's struggle is individual, which with Oliver Stone, I think, or anybody kind of making the point with war, it's like, listen, everybody wants to survive, but also kind of, cohesively, things have to function in a certain way. But in this, everything is both stripped of context, and every struggle is like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. I have a heroin addiction. The only like normal person is given like fifth billing, and that's like Jay Baruchel's like character, who if they were actually trying to cast a war movie, he would be the person cast because number one, like an auteur director like Oliver Stone would say, listen, you're the closest probably in age to what people are actually like. Everybody else is a middle-aged man pretending to be like a 19-year-old soldier in war. Like number one in the Vietnam War, which is why everybody in Platoon later went on to be famous actors. Or like, I mean, like, Charlie Sheen wasn't even necessarily like, it's around the same time that like, around the same time he was in like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Yeah. Like, so he's not like, so they're taking that and they're, but like at the same time, like these are middle-aged men burning out at the end of their careers as actors. Like, number one. Number two, they're all brands. They all have something they're trying to promote, which is why they're thrown into the mix of this. But then the movie stops there. It doesn't say anything about war. It doesn't say anything. It just kind of does the same. They're like, oh, well, didn't you guys have fun in Hawaii shooting this movie about how ridiculous it is that, movies don't have any context these days? And all right. Well, final thoughts. Marcus.
Yeah, and I'd say like I've never thought of Tropic Thunder as a war movie, and I think like for these like the reasons where it's just like yeah, there's just like this ridiculous thing is like kind of like painted on there. It's like this. It's like the sitcom, and like, which like I don't know how you do it, because even with like a movie like The Other Guys, where they're like literally trying to tell you about like financial corruption and all these things, I feel like it still gets lost. People are there for the laughs, and so like it's not there. I don't know that it would have worked if it was there. Because even like the quote unquote anti-war movies that we talk about don't really do anything to stop war, and they actually do a lot to glorify it into the uncritical young mind. But at the end of the day, I do think it does a good job of kind of just like critiquing what these people know, which is themselves, other actors and all that stuff like that. And is it done the like the absolute best way? It's like, I don't know. And like, is blackface the right thing to fucking do? Like, I don't know. But at the end of the fucking day, I think one of the big things is like, it does come down to intent, I think, where it's not just doing it to do it. This isn't something that made things often, and I think that might be something too that might like bringing up Chappelle, a black man just doing his own comedy did a lot more to actually, get white people to say the N-word and all this type of shit, to act in offensive ways because it was so popular. And Robert Downey Jr. doing blackface did not really increase, people doing blackface. I don't think, like it's not like some type of spike or anything, so that's where I think
in every community.
Yeah, so that's where like I think, I mean, it does I guess it's on the right side of the line where it does all the offensive things. Hopefully people can get out of like, you should look out for these things in Hollywood of people trying to be people that they or do things that's not just so inauthentic to the point it is offensive. But I mean, yeah, I mean, at the end of the fucking day, when you've got like a movie coming out in theaters, like expect it to be lib as fuck.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you on that analysis in general. I think also though, one thing I think this movie is saved by is the fact that for all of that time, pretty much like in the 70s and early 80s, like white people were writing black guy Vietnam dialogue. So Robert Downey Jr.'s character in that movie as someone doing blackface can be like a not only just a caricature, but like speaking a different language. Like he's speaking in jive when they're actually not when he's talking, but like when they're actually shooting the movie, he's like, "You cracker ass, get back to the helicopter." Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's not a way that any actual person talks or has ever talked. You know what I mean? Like that. So I think
that's why they have the black character exposing this dude for how hollow his performance is at every step of the way. Like every time he speaks, and like the speaking to the point of like whether there is a Barnes in this movie. I feel like the one character who comes close to being a Barnes type of person is Robert Downey Jr.'s character, but he's so ineffectual because every scene this black dude just like every second that he says something even remotely, like out of line, he just like points it out. What do you mean, your people?
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
The best line is, the best line that he says is like when Robert Downey Jr. is like, for 400 years that word has oppressed him.
Oh yeah,
because there are times where it seems like it's kind of not written in the script, but like it seems like his character is kind of maliciously taunting the fact that there's one, like, you know what I mean, that you're expected to just believe that like he's stuck in method, but like there are times when it gets very fucking dicey. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's no actual person that would be like, for 400 years you like that word has oppressed us. No, that's not something that any
yeah, no.
Yeah, but like, I mean, if I can say what I think, I mean, like, I'll just quickly say that this movie, basically, I kind of like when they show the kind of more a truer picture. They kind of had to couch it in the form of like these are actors who are trying to make a war movie rather than actual like military or anything like that. But the fact is that they're basically clueless, bumbling around, they're being goofballs, and they're leaderless, and like they basically lost their leader to history itself, like it seems like, because he steps on a landmine and all of that.
That guy wasn't going to be their, but that guy wasn't going to be their leader anyway, right? Like
anyway,
that
right? Yeah,
was also completely ineffectual. Like the fact, I think it's a big point that at the beginning of it, when Ben Stiller's character can't cry, they stop the shooting. Like that's not something that in you know, if a director has command of a set, like of a shoot, he's the one that calls cut. Steve Coogan never calls cut within that, like, and he never calls action either. He just kind of like, you know what I mean? Like they're the ones calling the shots, which I think is the point that they're making with like Matthew McConaughey's character being like, oh, I'll give you anything you want. Like I'll be like the TiVo. You need to get the TiVo, and he comes out with it at the end. Like the fact is that, you know, I mean, and probably like A-list actors 100% are over pampered, but then, you know, within that you kind of miss the fact that there's union busting going on with, you know, actors that they're just kind of finding, and Oliver Stone just like, listen, we can replace you with anybody. You sure you want to fucking leave this country? Like, you know what I mean? Like that you've never been in before, because we could just replace your birth. We have another teenager, like another 20-year-old, another 20, like, you know what I mean, waiting for you. Like we could just replace anybody. But in this case, the director's the one that's now replaceable. Like there doesn't even need to be a director, because they're just kind of wandering through the jungle aimlessly.
but again, like kind of tie it back to the concept of like financialization, to the concept of like corporatization, where essentially it's a person sitting in a room and like overseeing the whole damn thing from like you know, a situation room time situation, a setting, and like just like negotiating on the phone and like, you know, yelling at people and like lording over, etc. So there is like a kind of authoritative figure, except like it's not this conventional type, and it does like kind of connect to a whole like oligarchy, man behind the curtain dancing, because at the end, after the Oscar award goes to Ben Stiller's character, Tom Cruise is like seen dancing to a hip hop song and like being his entire like obscene self, which you can imagine like somebody like Harvey Weinstein doing that after he has bought the Oscar for whatever, you know, movie that he that paid off for him. Kind of like gives the same kind of impression, which also kind of ties back to the relationship private defense contractors have, like the kind of financialized like oligarchy bankers have with respect to power and authority. So it's just like, I feel like a statement on all of this, which is also kind of like revealed in the fact that the actors and roles are so interchangeable, that the blackface characters, like the white dude, the whitest dude basically doing blackface, and like Ben Stiller, like the John Rambo character, also playing the supposedly mentally challenged or like disabled person, which is kind of supposed to be the point. I think like the interchangeableness is exposed by the fact that these are all like essentially powerless people, and they're all controlled by somebody who's in a room and yelling at them from behind the screen.
All right, Dick Warlock, final thoughts on this?
I mean, other than what's already been said, I remember loving this movie when it came out. I thought it was hilarious. I don't think it was as funny this time around, but there's still some really good shit in there. Like there's
same, but I was 13 when I saw this.
Yeah, I was 18. And like I said, me and the boys in the army loved it. You know, it's a bunch of dudes hanging out. You know, like bunch
of dudes hanging out, doing a racism.
Yeah, doing racism to each other, doing misogyny, saying the R word.
It's better if you say doing a racism, like so you can apologize later and say, I'm sorry for doing a racism. I'm sorry for doing the misogyny.
Or like also like we've talked about this on our stream many times, but like being in the military is one of the gayest things that you can do. Like especially like being in the infantry when there was women weren't allowed. It's very gay environment, right? So like Jack Black being strapped to a tree and saying, "I'll literally suck your dick right now." Like these were things after an
emotional moment where like a character actually cathartically releases the fact that like they're a human being and like they've you know what I mean, like they have gay feelings and to reconcile, and like sure, it's done in the 2008 way, but it's kind of like if you think back to what things were like in 2008 with Bush still as president, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of a more progressive than you kind of give it credit for, thinking back to what that time specifically was like.
Oh yeah.
And then he ruins it by being like, listen, yeah.
Undercuts it immediately with like, I'll suck your dick. yeah, I'll suck the balls.
It's people that have no connection to other human beings, right? Like as actors, they have no connection to other people. So someone finally has a human moment for the first time within the movie, and you're like kind of feeling like, oh well, wow, like this is someone that actually had a human moment, and I empathize with them. And then Jack Black's like, I'm a heroin addict, and I will literally suck the balls, like
yep.
Yeah,
I
like,
mean,
you know what I mean. So it's like it's immediately conjoined within this strange world of Hollywood cartoons, I guess.
I think them all being heightened versions of themselves, and like Ben Stiller directing the movie and then like really taking the piss out of himself is really like, I think like the Hollywood lends itself like to having a massive ego. And even when you're doing like satire of yourself, like there's still, I think, a tendency to portray yourself in certain. Winston. He's walking very precariously. When Marcus gets a certain look on his face, I can tell some shit's about to go down. Winston,
like shit is literally about to fall.
Yeah,
go
exactly.
Down. Like
exactly.
Cameras, lights.
You didn't fall into the trap I did when I was helping Ben Burge, like when I was producing Ben Burge's show. I had a tapestry behind me, and the cat, like, because my ex-girlfriend, we had 2 cats, and the cat would pull down the tapestry in the middle, so I'd have to be like trying to stop the cat, like I'd have to be taking one hand, stopping the cat from literally pulling down the tapestry behind me, like this.
Nice.
Well, I just have to deal with him biting my feet because he wants to go outside.
Yeah, but the heightened versions of themselves is, I think, is pretty cool. And I like the way they take the piss out of themselves. I think McConaughey is great in this. I think like it's just like having a fucking ball, just like dudes hanging out in this movie.
Yeah.
You know? Busting each other's balls.
I also kind of respect the fact that he decides the client is, which I guess financially kind of makes sense, but the client is more important than the plane. You know what I mean? Like, well, I mean, it doesn't financially make sense because I think that the fact that Tom Cruise's character is like, he wouldn't have to pay the same amount of money he had to pay McConaughey and the plane. You know what I mean? Like to save Ben Stiller's character, but he's like, you know what? We can kind of this actor's not going anywhere. We can kind of get rid of a problem that we're gonna have down the line. Like that is like the neoliberalization of film. I mean, and it was also the studio system, the way that they kind of handle things. But like, I don't know, that part's interesting. But the fact that McConaughey chooses him and shows up in Vietnam, heartwarming. Somebody did care. I mean, it was your agent, and he's making a certain percentage. But you know, it's nice that you're making enough still at 40 to to have him care.
Got that TiVo, bro.
But there's also, I mean, this is the last thing I'll say before, I guess this will be my final thought before signing off. You know, I think that both in, he makes this point in Zoolander, Ben Stiller kind of says like, well, you know, as a male model, like we have a similar expiration date. You know what I mean? Like he's over as a male model, which we think about like, you know, women as models having like an expiration date. You know, you hit a certain point and nobody really wants to work with you anymore. And this, as an action star, he's kind of hit a certain point. And like maybe it's not age per se, but it's like his career, like you're on the wrong side of 40 is not something that we expect to hear to a guy. And in this kind of vapid world of like action movies, like, yeah, no, it's kind of true. And he's kind of made that point correctly. But it's interesting that in both movies, he kind of makes that same point.
I don't know, man. I still got to watch Bruce Willis slide down the side of a building in some fucking three-star direct to Netflix bullshit all the time. I'm like, how does this exist? It's like Bruce Willis is the janitor's cousin.
Yeah, like this is where though it's like I think like the fucking like there's like the boomer film industry where like there's always going to be some Liam Neeson saving you know his daughter. You know? Like literally like all these gun nuts that like are holding like a no shit shotgun to their daughter's prom date.
Yep.
Like they will eat that shit up, buy the DVD, and send a copy to their friend.
Doing the full speech from Taken to their prom date.
Yeah.
I listen. I'm not saying that in every case it works the same way. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I think that there is an A list, and I mean, men probably don't fall from all, you know, like all media, but like it is. I mean, it's Ben Stiller falling from that A list in this movie down to like. I don't think his career would be over in the sense of like he would never be in a movie again. I think his career would be over in the sense of he's going to straight to DVD or straight to Netflix type shit. I mean, you know, so I think
Seagal.
I mean, I have to wonder though, because like even those examples, like those are things that come after. But like was maybe that's the only thing that actually was inspired from this movie. You know, like people didn't do more blackface. People didn't change the fact that they're like acting in roles for like disabled people. However, the one thing that did change was the action star got older and older and older.
Yeah. The Expendables, because they're literally expendable. They're old. No, and people didn't stop being a dude. You know, this guy's another dude playing another dude. And with that, I'm gonna say, left is best, and dudes rock.